Okay, we're live.
All right.
I don't see anyone coming in yet. It just shows one.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure why it doesn't show. Oh, it shows two now. Hi, Catherine. Hi, Kimberly. Swedish and Monty, and we have Susty. Okay, all right.
Hello, hello.
There's Ruth. All right, I love that. Okay, Ruth from the Bible. I love that. Ruth was one of my favorite women from the Bible. Okay. Hi, how you doing, Kimberly? I just thought about that. When I thought about the name Ruth, because I grew up in the Baptist church. I'm not religious, but I am spiritual. Okay. So we're talking about women empowerment today. So that's why I thought about Ruth. She's an example in history of the strong women in the world. Okay. And so um, I guess I'll wait for a few. Well, I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself, okay? And my guest while we're waiting for more people. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, okay? Margaret Williams here. I am the author of the Empowered Leader publication, okay? I help women who have been marginalized to elevate their voices, stop surviving power systems, and start leading with freedom, influence, and authority. Okay. And so today I have with me Evie, all right, and Evie Bateman, and she and I are going to be talking today about women empowerment. Okay. And so Evie here, she is a writer, and her activity centers on sharp social political commentary, okay, specifically on feminism, patriarchy, political dissidence, okay, global conflicts, power structures. We have so many things in common. So we're going to have this powerful conversation today. And Evie's digital presence include Instagram and LinkedIn. Okay. And I am so happy to have Evie here with me today. She's such a powerful writer. She is magnificent, and she's a power all by herself. Okay. So tell us, Evie, what brought you to Substack, and tell us your story.
Thanks, Margaret, for inviting me here. This is only my second live. Well, my third live. I met with Walter Rain and Natasha Kay. I am not very good at public speaking, or I'm more of a put my words on paper kind of person. So this
Okay.
has been a really great experience just for me, kind of getting back into talking to people. And I was a childhood education director for over 20 years. And then I haven't been in front of people in 4 years. So I'm a little nervous and rusty when I get in front of a camera. But in the last 4 years, that the world has done a lot of changing, and I changed along with that world. And there was just certain things about myself that I really had to come to grips with, that I was kind of forcing myself into roles, and I was forcing myself to conform. And I finally just got to a point where I said, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm tired of conforming. I'm tired of playing this role. I want to do what I want to do. And I want to do what I want to do for the betterment of the right side of history. I don't want to be that person that just, kind of fell off into the shadows and, didn't speak up when I should have spoken up. And I didn't write the words down when I should have written the words down. And I had a lot of healing to do. So this last 4 years was just a very eye-opening experience for me. So I wrote a memoir, And I do, it's in editing right now. And I decided to get onto Substack to try and find my community because, like I said, I have been disconnected from the world for about 4 years now. Just holed up in my office writing, and my memoir is in editing right now. I'm hoping to have that published by the end of the summer. But writing my memoir was something that I came to a lot of realizations about myself, and specifically about myself as a white woman in this world, the roles that I was raised to play, the roles that I did play, and how I finally left those roles and I realized just how harmful they were. So my big thing now is, I've completely had a shift in mindset, and now I am embodying that mindset, and I'm trying to help the world shift into a place that, women can be empowered and we don't have to stay in those rigid mindsets under patriarchy. So that's my whole shtick. But I think that there's a lot of work that we have to do as women, because like I was saying before, you can leave patriarchy and you can leave the relationships, but you're not leaving the hierarchy mindset, and the hierarchy mindset is what really keeps women from coming together, because we have to get out of this, I don't feel whole unless somebody's below me mindset. And that's what patriarchy, I feel, has kind of given to us over thousands of years, where it's coded in our DNA. And, mothers and we watched our mothers do it and our grandmothers do it. And then we grew up in it. And it's like, if you only know what you know. And if you can't see it, how can you change it? So this is where I come in and I say, hey, I have a big flashlight and look what we're missing. Look at what we're not seeing. Look at the, and I always say that, patriarchy is 100% man's fault. They caused it, they're causing it. But women, we uphold it. Especially white women, we uphold it. And we do it in ways that we aren't even conscious about sometimes. Like we don't realize how we're upholding it. And I always kind of give the example of, the tearing down other women thing, and it happens in childhood. There was an example where, I was in 7th grade and my friends were all wearing makeup and I wanted to wear makeup too. And I found my mom's makeup and I put it on, and it wasn't perfect, but I was, feeling myself and I thought I looked pretty. And I came outside of the bathroom and my mom laughed at me and called me a clown. Those are the kinds of things that when, and that stuck with me. I was so embarrassed. I was sad. I was just, and that's wiring my brain to have this, we have to break people down to feel good about ourselves. Competitive bullshit mind frame that we're in. So I think that it starts in motherhood because mothers really need to uplift their daughters, and they really need to hold their sons accountable when it comes to breaking the chains of this patriarchal mindset.
Let me say this. I think it starts in the womb, if you stop and think about it, because some of these pregnancies were even forced upon
Right.
our mothers and grandmothers.
Right.
And so obviously they're going to feel resentful because of that, for one.
Right.
And the fact that, a lot of this abuse was also suffered by them and their mother and their grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
So we carry all this trauma in our bodies.
Yep.
Okay.
100%.
I got pregnant at 13. Okay.
That had to have been Yeah.
right? My body wasn't even fully developed.
Yeah.
Okay. This was, to me, it was not rape, but 13-year-old, what do you know at 13 years old?
Right.
Okay. This is a forced pregnancy on me. So yeah, I was resentful towards my daughter
Mm-hmm.
because I'm still a child. So what the hell I want with a child? You
Mm-hmm.
know? So we carry all these things with us, but we have to be able to identify it.
Right.
Okay? Identify this. Because
Right.
we don't want to take these things out on the child. It's not the child's fault.
Mm-mm. Yeah, and
Okay?
I deal with the same things, even when I was 17 when I got engaged to my first husband. My first husband was 4.5 years older than me. He had no business being with me. But it was so normalized in my family, nobody stopped it. School officials didn't stop it. They knew we were dating. I went to my junior prom and he was 21 years old, and I brought my 21-year-old boyfriend to my junior prom, and nobody said anything about it. And I was 16, and it's just nobody stopped it. Nobody intervened. It was just something that was always normalized. My parents didn't intervene, and then I was 17 when I got engaged. I was 18 when I got married. I got pregnant almost immediately. I had my son just before I turned 19. And, I was this kid. I knew in my brain I had this like kid mindset still, but I was expected to be this adult that I had no clue what I was doing. And I would go and I'd ask, the women in my family for advice, and they'd give me this advice that was just keeping me locked in this system. And I felt like I had no other choice but to just, okay, well, they're saying this is what I have to do, so this is what I have to do. And then I got divorced from my first husband 5 years later, which, surprise, surprise. And then I married my second husband, who was, I call him the devil incarnate, but that's what I say. But, he would then tell me how to be a mother, what a mother does. He would say things like, you're a very loving mother, but you have no idea how to be a mother. And he would tell me, you have to spank your kids. And I was like, I don't feel comfortable spanking my kids. And he was like, well, you have to do this and you have to do that. And, your kids are going to grow up and they're going to go to jail if you don't do this. And he would talk horribly to my children and, make them feel like they were, 2 inches tall. And we would constantly get in fights about it because I was always pushing back on everything. I did not fit into that system at all. And I really tried, I thought, I was really trying to do this patriarchal good woman role, and I could not for the life of me conform to it. I just fought it at every turn. And then because of that, I was labeled the crazy one. I was labeled the difficult one. I was smear campaigned. I was, everybody saying, like, she's just, she's difficult, and, she don't, and then they would hold information from me, and they wouldn't tell me everything because they knew that I would be like, I would say it. I'd be like, well, that's not right. This is what you told me, so I was cut out of conversations, and like important conversations and things, when I was going through my divorce with my second husband, there was conversations going on between my first ex-husband and my mother and my second ex-husband. And like, they were having these backyard conversations about me. And to me, I think that was my breaking point where I was like, fuck these people. They have no idea how much harm they're causing to my children, how much harm they're causing to me. And they don't love me. This is all transactional, patriarchal bullshit. And I want to do something else. I'm done living this life, And I did, and I left. And in 2016, I left everything. I left everybody, and I didn't tell a single soul I was leaving. And I moved 1,200 miles away to heal and figure out who the hell I was. And, you know, it was the hardest decision I ever made in my life and the best decision I ever made in my life. Because the clarity that came to me after I got out of that information, and it's, you know, I always say, you know, I had my faults and I did the things, I made certain decisions that I look back on and I say, you know, I should not have done that. And I should not have, you know, I should have made a better decision. But my life now for the last 10 years, since I've been away from all of that drama and all of that hierarchy, patriarchal bullshit, my life now is my own. And I've never been happier. And I've never, you know, I have, you know, my husband now, like we are literally best friends. And there's so much love between us. And, you know, it's a complete 180 from where I was 10 years ago. So who was the problem, I guess?
It wasn't you. And I had similar stories, okay? I was given up at 3 years old, okay, because my mother was schizophrenic and she could not take care of me, okay. She had an affair with my father, who was a Baptist minister, okay, and also narcissist and bipolar, okay. So she
Mhm.
said, okay, I got to give her away because I can't keep this child, you know. And
Mhm.
I'm glad that she did, because Lord knows where I could have ended up, maybe worse than where I ended up with my father, okay,
Yeah.
who used to beat me and my stepmother at will whenever he felt like it, whenever he came home, you know. So, um, growing up in that environment, and my stepmother would always be putting me down, you know, say, "Oh no, you're not going to be able to do this. You're not going to be able to do that." Because I always asked her, "Well, why you don't leave my father?" She said, you know, she didn't have her own money. So she didn't
Mhm.
have a job. So that means you have to be relying on him. So if he says jump, you better say how high. Okay.
Yeah.
If she ever thought about leaving him, I know he would kill her before he would allow her to leave. He was
Yep.
just that type of person. Okay. So she couldn't leave him.
Mhm.
So she she was down here, so she see the type of person I was, and I was going to be getting up out of there as soon as I could, okay, because
Mhm.
I ran away at 13 because he went to hit her, and I threw the iron at him. He went to the back room to get the shotgun, and I knew,
Mm.
I had enough sense to know that he was going to get the gun and shoot me. So I ran out the house, jumped off the stairs, and got out of the house. I never came back to the house after that. Okay, I
Yeah.
never came back because he was gonna kill me, and I knew that. Okay, just like Marvin Gaye's father killed him, I
Yeah.
would have been a statistic. So I left that house, and I stayed on the street. Okay, I left my daughter there. Okay,
Mm.
I left my daughter there, but I was 14 by that time, so I take my chances on the street. I'm here today. Okay.
Wow, that's incredible. Margaret, your story is incredible. That's
So
incredible.
So I tell these things is because I wanted to let everybody know, regardless of your situation you find yourself in, there's always a way out. You just have to have faith, and you have to
Mhm.
be positive thinking and think quickly to get out, you know?
Yeah.
So this year, I finally figured out why my family, disowned me, basically. I was the black sheep,
Mhm.
okay, and the scapegoat.
Yep.
So everything was blamed on me. And I was the one that was considered crazy, okay,
Mhm.
weird, okay. They even tried to have me committed, so,
Yeah.
so they can take everything from me financially. But there's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with my faculties. They even tried to my credibility,
Yeah.
try to strip my credibility. But how can you do that after 39 years of government service and uh, you know, have no problems, no difficulties whatsoever. Okay.
Right.
So
Well, you know, and that's the thing with abused people is we have completely normal expected reactions to the abuse that we're enduring, and they try to spin the narrative that we've gone insane, and that, you know, oh my gosh,
Exactly.
she's acting crazy. And it's like, no, I'm reacting to being abused.
Well, at the time, I had walked away from my $130,000 a job. I was at the lowest point in my life, and I had some things was going on mentally, emotionally, everything. You know, I guess so. I had lost
Right.
everything. Okay, and so
Mm-hmm.
the people that are supposed to be there to help you, support you, are the ones that are taking the information. Okay, I have a complex PTSD. They're using all these things against me to try to drive me crazy so they can have me committed. Well, that's not going to
Mm-hmm.
happen. There's
Yep.
nothing wrong with me. Okay. So
Yep.
what I did was I blocked each and every one of them. Okay. And I'm living my life in peace and harmony. They could never come back into my life ever again. Okay, period.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to do with it. If I cut off family, I will cut off anybody else, and I've cut off as many people as I have to maintain my mental, physical,
Mm-hmm.
emotional well-being, because these people are insecure. And anybody is insecure, you don't want them around you because they don't mean you any good.
They
Okay.
don't. They don't. And I realized that even, you know, like when I said I left Michigan and I came to Texas, um, you know, I was ridiculed pretty hard because I left my children. Um, the only thing is that people see, you know, the choice you made, but they don't understand the options you were given. And I had just endured, you know, the post separation abuse after I left my second husband. The post separation abuse was horrific. I had never experienced anything so horrible in my life. I was being gang stalked, and I'd have people following me. I'd have people infiltrating friendships and just, you know, twisting narratives and taking my words and twisting those words. And, you know, I'd post something on Facebook and then they would like screenshot it and they'd send it off. And it was just a constant harassment. I ended up having to go to a temp agency because I couldn't keep a job, because it was a really small town where I lived in. So everybody knew everybody. And, you know, at one point I was working, my boss was my first ex-husband's cousin, for crying out loud. And it was just, you know, I would work there for a little while and then they would just like, oh, we don't need you anymore. We don't need. So I ended up going for a temp agency because at least I'm guaranteed, you know, work. But it got to a point where I couldn't afford to do anything anymore. I was my savings, what the money that I got in my settlement from my divorce was depleting because I was in and out of court nonstop. Whether it was my first ex-husband or my second ex-husband, I was in and out of court nonstop. It was just the abuse of the court systems that they were using against me. It was nonstop. CPS was constantly called to my house. I have a 20-year career working with children, and where I have to have background checks, you know, every single, and then they have to rerun the background check every 2 years. And I had a 20-year career working with children, but yet I had CPS at my door nonstop. And I got to a point where when my children started turning on me, that broke my heart in a million pieces. It broke something inside of me that I could never go back to the way that I was, because it changed me. You know, when I looked at these children and I apologize if I get choked up. It's one of those things where I feel, you know, it's taken me years to be able to talk about, but I still have my moments where I'm like, damn, it's, you know, I love my children more than anything in this world. And they took that from me. They took that from them, where, you know, they would tell my kids horrible things about me. And some were like truthful, you know, like I did at one point have a drinking problem, but it wasn't anything that, you know, I wasn't like slobbery drunk and like being weird in front of my kids or anything like that. It was just, I was kind of using it at night to numb myself a little bit. But, it wasn't anything where my kids would have never noticed if they hadn't said anything to them. And they were little, And then when they started turning against me and they started saying, I hate you and I don't, you don't love me, because that was one thing, my ex-husband would always tell the kids, your mother doesn't love you. If she loved you, she would do this. If she loved you, she would do that. And, despite the fact that I was living in survival mode and just trying to I was busting my ass working, and I could barely spend any time with them because I was the single mom of 3 kids. And I was doing what I had to do to make ends meet. And then at the end of it, I was exhausted. So it was just, it was when they finally turned my children against me completely and they wanted nothing to do with me. They didn't want to visit me. They didn't want to talk to me on the phone. They didn't want anything. That's when I finally realized, I said, oh shit, I lost my friends. I lost my family. And now I lost my kids. I have nothing. So I just made the decision for myself. I said, you know what? I deserve better. I deserve to live. I deserve to be loved and to love. And I deserve to have a life where, this is not the end of my fucking story. No way. This is not the end of my story. So I moved. I just picked up and I moved 1,200 miles away to Texas. Why Texas? I don't know. It was the furthest point away from that old life I could think of. And I started new, and I got a job, and I started working as an assistant director at a Montessori school. And then I got my director's license here in Texas, and I became a director again and started my career back up again. And I built community, and I had friends, and I met a man who I'm completely in love with, and he's completely in love with me. And, we treat each other as equals, and we don't have, those typical roles in the household or anything like that. I mean, my husband does more cooking than I do, and he takes care of the kids more than I do right now, because he's got 5 kids as well. But, we support each other, and we nurture each other, and we love each other. And we, our family is one of the most important things in our lives right now. That comes above anything, is our family. And we're making sure, we are raising our kids to be good humans, because after everything that I experienced in Michigan, no fucking way am I going to put any kind of human being like that out into the world again. So there's accountability in our house, and there's honesty in our house. And, when we mess up, we say we're sorry. That's something that I never heard as a kid, was I'm sorry. So, just the other day, my son, my 9-year-old, he opened up the ketchup bottle and it went everywhere. And I had already told him, I said, anytime you need to open the ketchup bottle, just ask for help. And he didn't ask for help again. And I went, God dang it. And I got upset. And then that evening, I hugged him and I said, Bud, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have yelled. I'm really sorry. I won't do that anymore. I'll try not to do that anymore, because I can't guarantee I won't. But, and him and I hugging, and then we talk about it, and we have these incredible conversations that are helping to develop their brain and their emotional maturity. And, I didn't have that as a kid. And that's all stuff that I had to actually learn through trauma and pain. And I'll be damned if I'm going to have my kids learning that through trauma and pain. So
Yes, yes. I just want to say, being, betrayed. I can't say I was betrayed by my mother because she was mentally ill. Okay. But still, the abandonment is still there. Being betrayed
right.
and being abused, mentally, physically abused by my father. My
Mhm.
stepmother was basically, she was just, I don't know, holding on by a thread.
Yeah.
Okay, so she really couldn't be helpful. So, the whole family system was messed up, and leaving that narcissistic system and going to work for the military,
Mhm.
something that I know about narcissistic systems. That's
Mhm.
how I survived it. Okay. but
Yeah.
it leaves, all of these things leave their mark on us mentally, physically, emotionally, and then we have to figure out how to heal from those things, and we have to do the shadow work,
Yep.
we have to heal those mother wounds and father wounds, okay, because otherwise these type of people keep coming into our lives because they can see that we are, I wouldn't say broken, but we have these issues with
Hmm.
codependency, perfectionism,
Yep. They
low
see the weakness in the
self-esteem.
armor.
Exactly. So
Hmm.
we instantly become a target.
Yes.
Okay. So once we heal these things, then we increase our vibration.
Hmm.
Okay, we can ward off these type of people in the future.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and I tell
Because
women all the time, I'm like, you have to become a porcupine because it's really hard to hug us. When you're healing, you have to really, listen twice as much as you talk. And I think that was my biggest thing because when I first left, like I didn't really talk a lot because my words were so used against me that I was like, okay, I don't know a soul here in Texas. I'm going to just listen. And um, through that listening, I realized just how much I needed to shut up. Because listening, and I tell my kids this too. I'm like, you got to listen twice as much as you talk. Otherwise, you're not gonna get it. You're not the most important person in the room. We're all into this together. But my children now, like my biological children, they're all adults. My youngest is 21. I have a 23-year-old and a 25-year-old. And I have a good relationship with my 25-year-old. He lives here in Texas with me. My 23-year-old we're estranged, but we still kind of talk on and off with each other. And my youngest, we don't talk at all. And this is the consequence of what happens when women give away their power to men. When women give their power away to narcissists, even if it's other narcissistic women, like the women who uphold patriarchy, those women are just as not trustworthy as the men are because
those
I'm sorry, go ahead.
those are the one of the most dangerous.
Yes. Yes. 100%.
Because you
So,
know why? Because they smile in your face and they
mhm,
stab you at the back at the
yep.
same time.
Yep. And when the person who's doing that is your own mother, to a daughter, that is devastating. That will make a little girl grow up never trusting herself, never owning her body, never understanding the world around her. Like her discernment is going to be completely off. She's not going to understand. Like with my second ex-husband, he was horrible and treated, and I'd have friends telling me, I had one friend who said, that song by Bruno Mars, that I'd catch a grenade for you. She's like, that's who you remind me of, Amber, when it comes to your husband, because he's so fucking terrible to you and you keep protecting him. And I didn't understand it because here I'm like, that's my husband and I have to protect him no matter what. I have to have the good, patriarchal woman role, and you protect your husband and your kids no matter what. And that was the person that was harming me the most. That was the person that was harming my children the most. But I couldn't see it because I was in the system. And sometimes you just have to pull yourself out of that system to see it in the first place. And
You
when
know
I,
what? I'm glad you brought that up because that reminds me of the political dissidence that we're seeing in the world, where all
yes,
these women are complicit. And
yes,
no,
I
okay,
know. And you just want to like shake them. You want to like shake the shit out of them. You're like, wake up. Why can't you see this? But it's like you have to literally pull yourself out and get a bird's eye view of what's going on. around you and what's going on in the world. And once you pull yourself out and you get that bird's eye view, you start to see the systems for exactly for what they are. And especially the patriarchal system, like I said, I did not completely see it until I had lost everything and moved away. And then once I moved away and I lost everything, I had nowhere to go but up again. And as I went up, I just started observing and seeing everything around me. And I would meet women who were in the exact same situation as me. And when I finally saw it face to face, I was like, oh my God, what did I do?
This remind me, as I told you back in the day, there was the Stepford Wives. Then they
Mm-hmm.
came out with the Handmaiden's Tale. What's the difference?
Right.
What's the difference? We have our instructions, okay? We're getting this instruction book, and these are the things you're going to follow. I will cook 3 meals a day. I will do this. I will do that. You follow that book, and they give it to every woman, and she follows that.
Yep.
Okay, then they show where he had his concubine and where he spent time with his concubine and all that other stuff. Yeah, right.
Yep.
Taking us all the way back. Okay,
Yep.
making America great again. Okay, we are becoming the Stepford Wives of 2026.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
No, you're absolutely right. And then women like me and like you come along and we take that book and we burn it. And we're like, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. That's stupid.
And then we become the truth seekers, and we become the victim. We become the person that needs to be taken out
Yeah.
because they want to keep the status quo. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
and we're not about that. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So we are a threat to that systems.
Yeah, 100%. And I understand that, especially, when I do talk about white women and their proximity to power and how they need to leave that. And I'm basically just telling them, you need to blow up your whole life. If you want to get out of this, you have to blow up your whole life, because essentially they do. Unless they have support and they have a husband who comes to the light as well and sees, like, oh yeah, this is not a good system that we're in, and I support you. But it's not like that. This proximity to power is something that it like I said, it's like coded in our DNA. And what my role is, I feel, in this evolution of women, is I'm here to say, you need to break that shit. It's harming you. And then, a lot of white women they'll leave the proximity to power to white men, and then they'll try to latch on to the proximity of power to Black women. And then they want Black women to validate their feelings constantly. Like, hey, I'm so sorry that, you're, and it's like, no, what we need to do is we need to name what the harm is. And then to be a true ally, it has to cost you something. So when you go to that dinner, don't go up into Black women's comment sections and just start giving them this bleeding heart and want them to make you feel better, because that's not true allyship. True allyship would be to go to your Thanksgiving dinner, your Christmas dinner, whatever dinner you go to or whatever, and you tell your racist uncle to fuck off. And you tell your mom or your dad, quit talking like that. And if you don't stop talking like that, you don't get to be around my children, because I'm not going to put my children in the presence of racism and misogyny and all that bullshit.
If you're right, because otherwise we're complicit and we are part of the problem. Okay.
Exactly.
You might have not have been involved with the sex parties, Epstein, but you knew about it. So
right.
You're just as guilty as those that was involved.
Exactly. And it goes even with, like, I wrote a piece called The Creepy Uncle, because I have an uncle who I didn't even find out was a registered. He apparently, when I was 13 or 14 years old, he was convicted of second-degree sexual conduct of a sexual assault of a child. I didn't know that. And here in my 20s, I'm, Googling his name because I was trying to see if whatever, it doesn't even matter what I was trying to see. It had to do with their construction business. And I Googled, and all of a sudden this picture came up with his mugshot. And I was like, that's my uncle. What the hell? And I click on it, and it's the sex offender registry in Wisconsin. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And here I have spent family reunions with this guy. I've spent holidays with this guy. He's been in my fucking home. And I'm going, why was this kept a secret? Why? And the fact that, I mean, I was sexually assaulted when I was 2, 3, and 4 years old. And even though I remember the things that were done to me, I have a hard time remembering the face of who did it. So knowing that, I'm completely distrusting of my family. And I brought it up to my mom too. And I just said, what were you thinking doing that? And my aunts and my other uncles, we have a huge family, and all these nieces and all these nephews were around him, and you all just kept inviting him into our worlds. And he's a child sexual predator. So it just, it's those kinds of things. Like, you have to get loud. And if you want to break these chains out of this system, you have to get loud about the things that matter. Racism, misogyny, child sexual predators. Get loud and understand that you're going to lose something in this. You're going to lose family members. You're going to lose respect, I guess, from your family members. But it's like, honestly, consider the source. I don't really care if I lose the respect of people who are going to protect that bullshit,
Yeah, because all these years I've been feeling guilty about having sex with this boy that my father brought to the house purposely. He brought the boy to the house. There was no other boys there. There was just me. Why would you bring him there? And then he's off having sex with some woman in her apartment. Okay? You set this up to happen. Okay? For me to get the pregnancy, and then you blame me.
Yeah.
Then you blame me why you do this.
Yeah. And I got blamed for my divorces too. I mean, here I was a kid, and I married, a grown man who should not have been with me. He should have been with somebody his own age, and somebody should have stopped it. Somebody should have intervened. But, it makes sense, given the sexual assault that I had as a really young kid. I was over-sexualized as a middle schooler and a high schooler. I always dated older people. I did not relate to kids that were my age. Even my friends, I had very few friends that were my age. Most of my friends were older. And it just, all of a sudden, it's like everything comes into focus, and you're like, oh my God, that's why. And I didn't get that until I actually started going to therapy. When I got to Texas, I really my healing was the most important thing on this planet when I first moved here, because I was like, I'm not going to remain a victim my whole life. I was like, this isn't my story. So I said, I'm going to go, and I'm going to get help, and I'm going to talk about these things. And I had so many nights on the bathroom floor crying, just in a puddle, but it was all things that I had to get through. I'm grateful that my children didn't have to witness my healing, because it was rough for a few years. But I did get to the other side of it, thankfully. And these are all the realizations that I have had since healing. And they're not things that I feel like I should be ashamed of anymore, because the shame is something that, again, in a patriarchal system, shame is a huge controller. They try to shame you into feeling bad about all these decisions that you made when you were 12, 13 years old. And it's like, no, we were children. You can't, my dad, I'm almost 44 years old right now. And I can guarantee you, if I had a conversation with my dad, he'd probably bring something up that I did at like 10.
I'm going to be honest. This is one of the reasons why I had relationship issues and issues with having an orgasm, because I'm antiquating that pain and sex are one of the same, and they're
Mhm.
not.
Right.
Okay, because every partner I had was a narcissist.
Right.
And so I didn't think that I deserve anything better.
It is a direct
Okay.
correlation. When you have that trauma, you will find partners that will keep you in that state, and you don't even realize you're doing it. Here I am thinking I'm a strong, independent woman, and then I marry the biggest narcissist, next to Donald Trump. It's just, you just don't see it until you remove yourself from it. And that's what I want to do, is I want to help empower women to get the fuck away from it. Get away from this so you can see what it's doing to you. Get away from it so you can see what it's doing to your children. Because I can
It's
guarantee
killing
you.
you.
Yeah, I
It's
can.
killing you is what
It
it's
is.
doing.
It's absolutely killing you. I ended up having seizures. They were called psychogenic non-epileptic seizures, which a lot of people will be like, well, that's not a real thing, but it absolutely was real for me. I had 8 of them. I had the ambulance called. I was hospitalized. I quit breathing to where I almost died, and they were very real for me. But it was just my body had dumped so much cortisol into my system that it just kind of short circuited, and I ended up having those seizures. I lost my driver's license, all of it. And I had to have treatments for it. I had to go to a neurologist for 2 years, but it was fake, fake. So it's just one of those things where, like, it does kill you. It will give you heart attacks. It will give you strokes. It will, like, that stress is, my husband, even a couple of years ago, ended up switching jobs because the job that he was in was giving him horrible stomach problems. I mean, like, just pain in his stomach, and he couldn't figure out what it was. He had a fucking ulcer because of stress. And it's like this chronic stress that women go through, that's like our baseline. And there's something so fundamentally wrong with that. And we need to see this. Like, that should not be our baseline. We should not be under that much stress.
Okay, I'm gonna give you an example, because I've had a number of narcissists come in my DMs. And as soon as they come in my DMs, I see the picture. Normally, they're very good looking men. They're, physique is looking good. It's the type of guy, that you would definitely go for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But in the pit of my stomach, I feel something just so heavy. And I say,
Mm-hmm.
that's a narcissist. I immediately block them and keep moving.
Yeah. And you can pinpoint what a narcissist sounds like. And that's why I said I had to stop talking, and I had to listen twice as much as I was talking, because there was certain things that there's certain things that all narcissists say, all narcissists do. I don't care who you are, man or woman.
Yeah.
There is they have a very particular cadence that they speak. They have key words that they say. And once you catch on to what those key words are and how they move and how the cadence of which they speak and things like that, that just helps you kind of sharpen your discernment to where all you do is move away from them. You're not going to change them ever.
Not at all.
And
No.
an empath, somebody who's got empathy, which women do have a lot of empathy, empaths just think like they can love the hate away. And I'm here to say,
Don't
no,
work.
you can't. A narcissist is a narcissist, and the only way they change is if they want to change. You cannot force a narcissist to change. And even if
I
they
never
change,
seen one
it's so
change. I
temporary.
never seen one. I never seen one change ever. My
Yeah.
father, he never changed. He never apologized for anything that he did to me, even on his deathbed.
Yeah. And he won't. And I think narcissists, like, I came out of no contact after 8 years and called my parents, just because I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out why the hell I did that. But I came out of no contact after 8 years to talk to my parents, and I called my dad first, and I said, you know, hey, how are you doing? And he goes, oh, hey, hey, Amber, what do you want? What do you need? And I just said, you know, I don't need a goddamn thing. I'm up on him. I was like, I don't even know. Like, maybe I wanted closure, you know, but that again, you're never going to get it. I
No,
realize that, you know, you're never going to get closure from a narcissist. You're never going to get anything from a narcissist. It's their playing field. And the second you step onto their playing field, you give away all your power. That's why don't ever step on their playing field. Just stay the fuck away from them. Honestly.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to do. You know, when we talking about women empowerment, is that
Mhm.
knowing who we can rely on, who we cannot. You know, because everybody's like, oh yeah, we for women empowerment, but when it's time to roll up your sleeve and do the work, how many people going to be actually there to help you?
Mhm.
That's my
Right.
concern. That's my concern.
Right. Well, like for
Because
instance, you know, I
people
had
talk a good game.
yeah, I
Go
had
ahead.
a conversation with a woman who, you know, she just happens to be my son's boss, and she was telling me about her horrible relationship, and she was saying how, you know, he screams at her and he screams at her kids from another marriage, and she can't take much more of it. And I told her everything that kind of what I'm saying right now about, you know, this doesn't get any better. It doesn't, unless he wants it to. And right now he's so hellbent on control. It's just, that's all he's thinking about. He's not thinking about getting it better. He wants you to conform. He wants you to get your neck under his boot. That's all he wants. And then I went into and I told her about, you know, what the implications of staying does. And I told her about what happened with me and my kids and how it kind of destroyed my relationship with 2 out of the 3 of them. And that was enough to get her to leave. And I did tell her, I said, if you need anything, just let me know. So now once a week, 1 day a week, I help her offset childcare costs and I watch her baby. Because how do you empower women if you're not going to fucking support them? How do you empower women if you're not going to help them get away from it? You know?
Is I don't know what the statistic is of women that eventually goes back. When you go back to these relationships, the abuse get worse
Yes.
because you left. And he
Mm-hmm.
want to make sure that you don't leave. He or she want to make sure you don't leave again. So the punishment is going to be much more severe when you go back the next time. You might end up
Yes.
dead.
Yes. And, you know, I also want to say too that, you know, when a woman does leave a narcissistic person, the post separation abuse, that it's a pretty dangerous time for her. And like me, I left without a support system. I left without, you know, well, a real support system. You know, I had people that were willing to help, but only if I did exactly what they wanted me to do, which was still keeping me in that system. And I wanted to be completely removed from that system. So I had help, but I didn't have help. And I think that there is a whole community of women like myself and like, you know, you and anybody
Yes.
else that has left and has seen the light and are, you know, moving differently in this world. There's a whole community of women that are willing and able to support you. And those are the women you need to find. Don't go to your old support system, because that
It's
could
all
actually be
compromise.
dangerous.
It's all compromise 9 times out of 10 because they all working
Right.
together.
Right.
Okay.
And the important thing is, like, you know, that is a pretty dangerous time for women, you know, especially with a narcissist. So having a completely different support system that is away from that narcissist, you know, like I said, I mean, I would, you know, my first ex-husband has a really good relationship with my mother, and my second ex-husband would talk to my first ex-husband. My first ex-husband would get information from my mother, about me and about my whereabouts and everything like that. And then my second ex-husband would have friends of his following me, or he would be following me, or, you know, it was just, it's still in that closed loop. So my big thing is, when you're ready to leave, which I really hope women who are in that situation and they're just, you know, they're looking around at their life and they're just going, how the hell did I get here? This is not my story. This is not how I want my life to be. This is not what I intended it to be. I have hopes and dreams and I want to go after them, and I want my children to be happy and I want to be happy. And you're really thinking about leaving. You have to find the support system of women that are completely detached from patriarchy, completely detached from, like, they understand what you're going through, and they know what you're going through, and they know how dangerous it is, and they will protect you and help you and support you.
I want to say, as far as global conflicts, we have seen stories where the man has took the kid out of the country and the woman was trying to figure out how she gonna get her kid back.
Yeah. That's crazy. And that does happen. That's real, you know? I mean, even when I moved, you know, away, I moved a couple school districts away when I first left my ex-husband. He would drive an hour and a half to go spend the day with him at school, a couple days a week. And this is a man who I couldn't get him to do anything at the school when I was married to him. You know, I'd be like, oh, there's this event going at school. Do you want to come with us? And he's like, no. And then all of a sudden now, when I left, and he had like the teacher's personal phone numbers, and he would, you know, like, he ended up getting the doctor that I was bringing my son to. He got that doctor's phone number and was having personal conversations with that doctor. I mean, it was just, when I say he infiltrated every single relationship, it was every single relationship. I had zero safe space, zero. So, and that, you know, that alone is enough to completely take your safety away.
Women has also done the same thing to men, from my understanding. So, you know, on both sides. So it's important for us to go no contact, keep our circle small, okay?
Yep.
And pay attention when your body is telling you something. Pay attention.
Yep.
And looking for pattern recognition, okay?
Yes. Look for those things that, you know, every single time you put your foot down and then you end up giving in eventually. What was it that made you give in? What phrase did he say? What, you know, how did he treat you? Mine was usually after, you know, a week or two without speaking, I would finally give in, and I'd be like, okay, can we, you know, I'm sorry, even though I wasn't fucking sorry. I'm sorry I did this. I'm sorry I did that. And I would always give in, time and time and time again, because it was the silent treatment killed me. And I think that has to do with, like, you know, when I was a kid, I needed my parents and I needed them to hear me, especially because I was being sexually abused. I needed them. And I was met with silence. So when I got into my marriages, anytime I would get the silent treatment, it would like trigger me and I'd panic. And I'm like, okay, it's been too long. You know, we need to squash this. But we didn't.
And that's
We leave him.
and that's exactly where he wanted you.
Yeah. And then, you know, the first couple years of our marriage, it was physical. You know, he would push me around. He would smack me around. He would do anything. You know, choking was a huge one, which strangulation, if your person is strangling you, that is, the next step is murder. And I don't care what anybody says, the next step is murder. And I wish I would have understood it more myself, because he would strangle me until I would pass out or near pass out. And one day, I lost my shit. I completely snapped, and I did become a crazy person. and he strangled me, and I fought him, and I got him off of me, and I came up and I Superman punched him so hard in the face. I split his lip, and I went nuts, and I said, if you ever fucking touch me again, I will kill you. And I meant it. And I think he could see that I meant it, because he never touched me again after that. But after that happened, it became verbal abuse with me, and then he got physical with my children. And
Oh my God.
and that is something that I didn't find out. I don't even know. I had no idea what he was doing behind closed doors, because he always did this when I wasn't around. I never saw him spank my kids. But then after I left him, my kids kind of had this, I'm going to tell you everything that happened session with me, and told me that one day, you know, when my son was 7 or 8 years old, he dropped him off on the side of the road because he fell asleep in the car, and he wasn't doing his homework, and he fell asleep in the car after a 2-hour wrestling practice. And he fell asleep, and he woke him up, and he dropped him off at night in the country where we have wolves and bears and everything.
Oh my
Dropped
God.
him off on the side of the road and left my 8-year-old son on the side of the road like that. And I had no idea this happened. I'm sorry?
Did he ever come back? Did he ever come back to
He
get
did.
him?
He did after like 15 minutes, but he made my son think that he left him there.
Oh my God.
And then he told me times where, you know, when I wasn't around, he spanked him, like bare butt spanked him. And of course I always said, you know, like, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you let me know? And he was just like, well, we couldn't. We were too afraid. So even if he doesn't turn his aggression onto you and you have children, you need to protect those kids. And that's where I feel like I failed my children the most, because I didn't see it. And because I didn't see it, I had no idea. You know, to me, I was like, if I didn't see it, it's not happening. But I didn't realize that in that system that you're in, that was a possibility. So believe me, Margaret, I've had so many moments of reckoning over the last 10 years where I've had to really get right with decisions I've made. I've had to apologize to my children for failing them. And it's been a road.
How could you know? Really? How could you have ever known? Now, some women do know, because they bring these men to the house and they feel like, oh, well, I want to keep this man. So if he wants to have sex with my daughter or my son or whatever, I'm going to do what he needs to do so I can keep him. But at what cost? The man
Right.
is not going to want to, the man is not going to want you anyways. He only wants you for a specific amount of time, and
Right.
that's it, before he goes to his next victim. So why victimize your kids?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's my biggest message right now to women who are in relationships like that. You know, if it's physical and all of a sudden you stand, because once you punch a bully, they don't punch back. They only go after the weak. And I was weak to a degree where he felt like he could do that to me, until I finally punched back, literally. But then once I stood up for myself, and I was convincing enough to where I told him, I was like, I'll gladly go to prison, man. I was like, you ever touch me like that again, I will gladly go to prison. That's when he had to take his aggression out on somebody. And that's when he went to my children. So don't ever try like that. Patriarchy uses pain. Patriarchy uses control. They use shame.
And manipulation.
And manipulation. And denial. One thing that, they did that.
Deny.
Yep.
They use gaslighting.
Yep.
They love bomb you.
Oh, yeah.
Passive aggression.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. A lot of things.
And somebody who loves you, who loves you would never make you feel that way. Somebody who loves you would never, ever, ever make you feel like you were less than. That's not what people who love you do.
And they breadcrumb you to see how much they can get away with. They'll just give you the bare minimum to keep you.
Yep,
Okay,
and that's a red
flag.
That's a red flag. So even at, like, people who are dating right now, if they're getting breadcrumbed and love bombed and stuff like that, just walk away. Just walk away. It's not going to get any better. It's only going to get worse.
It's not cute. It's not funny. It's immature.
Right.
And you need to grow the hell up. So block their asses and keep going.
Yep.
That's the kind of games the kids play. I'm not a kid.
Yeah. But see, I think men like that, I just wrote a piece the other day, yesterday, about how mothers are the patriarchy's Trojan horse. We have the ability to change the course. We can course correct our sons. And we don't need men to do this. We really don't. And I know that, like, women are like, it's so hard being a single mom. It's so hard. And yes, it is. It is so hard, but we are so capable. We are so capable and we are so powerful and we can so do this. We do not need men to do this. We can raise good boys that turn into good men that help the next generation of girls that are growing up, and then the next generation of women calm their nervous systems so we're not constantly in a fight or flight. We can do this, and we don't need men to do this. I honestly, matriarchy is where it's at. In my house right now, it's funny because the kids and my husband, they always say it's a matriarchy in this house. Because we talk about feelings, we name feelings. We, when our boys are having feelings about, like, big emotions about certain things, we let them have their big emotions and then we talk about it. And we say, we name the problem. We're just like, well, how do you feel? How would you feel if somebody did that to you? And then we give them examples. Like, what if your brother came into your room and did this to you? How would that make you feel? And we force them to name it. And then when we see that behavior again, we stop it immediately and we say, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. Remember that conversation we had the other day?
Evie, I just wanted to mention that Chris says he's the only child and a son of a single mom.
A warrior. Your mother's a warrior, Chris. Being a single mom is so hard. It's so hard. And I didn't do the best at it. I ended up leaving my children because of how hard it was, because I didn't get the support system nailed down that I needed to. I didn't, have the money, and money is something that they will control first, is your money. And he did control my money. And I had to kind of get it wherever I could get it until my divorce settlement came through. But money was something that they will lock down first. So you're going to need money. Don't ever let a man control your money. Ever.
Megan says she said she left this year with her three boys, standing on her own, creating and looking for her new tribe.
You're a warrior. You're a warrior, Megan. And just know that, there's such a network of women out there that we're here for you. Whatever you need. If you, and I, even if I can't help you, monetarily or anything like that, I can point you in the right direction. I'm so resourceful. That's one thing that I learned in this last 10 years is how to be resourceful, because I had nobody to guide me. I had nobody to point me in the right direction. So I had to just trial by error everything and just start looking, just start asking why, just start saying where, just start saying, hey, if you can't help me, who can help me? And don't ever take the answer, there's nothing we can do for you. Yeah, there is.
That's bullshit.
Yeah,
if somebody
there
tell
is.
you that, get rid of them. Okay, but that's not true. And that's the reason why I rebranded to to focus on women and women's issues, because all of these things impact not only us but our children and this present and future generations.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. But we do, as mothers, we are patriarchy's Trojan horse. We can absolutely dismantle this system. All we have to do is teach our children and teach our sons, because we are raising that next generation of patriarchy. I don't want to do that.
We have to break the cycle.
Yes, so we have to. And like I said, I know, yes, men are the cause. I know this, but we can't depend on them. We just can't depend on them. We have to do our part to it. And we are the ones that uphold it.
They're hurting too. Okay. To their defense, because many of them were told not to cry, suck it up. Okay.
And that's why I'm saying, mothers, this is where we step in. This is where we step in and we tell them it's okay to cry. You can cry. There's nothing wrong with crying. We have the power to do that. And we don't need men's permission to do that. We don't need men's permission to parent our children. Men can do what they want, and they can say what they want, and they can, try to tell their little boys, what it means to be a man. But we can tell little boys what it means to be a partner. So I want my kids to be good partners. I don't want, my kids to grow up and harm women like my ex-husband harmed me. Like my dad harmed my mom. And like how my grandpa harmed my grandmother. That's the cycle that I want to break. And men, y'all got your own animal. We got our animal. You got your animal. And all we can do is work on our part in this dismantling of the system. Because I'm not going to speak for men. That's not my place. I'm going to speak for women, and
that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
This is all we can do as women, and we don't need men to do this. Mm-mm. And don't ever let a man treat you terribly in front of your children, especially their father.
Exactly. Because those kids will never forget that. They will always remember that picture in their mind.
Yep. And it's modeling for them that, oh, this is how we treat girls. Oh, this is how we treat
women. And you know what? I hated my father because of that. How he treated my stepmother and my mother. I have no respect for a man to treat a woman like that.
Yep. But it's also, especially, and if they have daughters, it's also wiring the daughter's brain to this is acceptable. So then when they get older, they meet men who are just like their dads. I married two of them. I married, my first husband and my second husband both had attributes of my dad, and the worst ones. They had some, like my dad was funny. My dad, he was a great storyteller and he was funny. And my first ex-husband was funny. That was one thing that attracted me to him. But all the bad started coming out too. And I'm like, wow, the breadcrumbing and the love bombing and the fucking up, and then just expecting me to forgive. I think women too, especially growing up Catholic, Mother Mary was the poster child for how a woman should be. Women are the ultimate sufferers, and to suffer is to be a woman. And
says who? You know what I'm saying?
Right. And that's exactly what I say. I'm just like, that's bullshit. I don't think, the people who are the life givers, we give life. Why do we give life and then have that life make us suffer? That doesn't make any fucking sense. So, I think that religious trauma is something that really kind of shaped a lot of this as well. And Catholicism, absolutely has a patriarchal system. You know, even when we were having issues in our marriage at first, we went to the priest to give us marriage advice, you know, and I remember asking the questions, why the hell are we going to a priest for marriage advice and marriage counseling when these guys can't even get married? I was like, I don't get this. Why are we doing this? This doesn't make any sense. But then there I am again, asking questions, being difficult, being crazy. So
we know what the answer is. You be beholden to the man. So whatever he tell you to do, you do that. Be a good wife.
Exactly. I guess
Okay.
I'm not a good wife for under patriarchal standards, because that is something that I just fought all the time. I tried to conform, but it didn't, I just couldn't. But there are definitely, you know, I think once women realize that we don't need men's permission to be, I mean, just to be, we don't need men's permission to do any of that. We have sovereignty just like they do. You know, we're human beings just like them. We bear life. You know, if anything, I feel like women, I don't know how to say it, but it goes back kind of like to the yin and the yang. Like, women have their part that they do flawlessly. Men have their part that they do flawlessly. One part doesn't supersede the other. We just have to figure out how to work together. But in patriarchy, it is a hierarchy. There is no working together. There is man over woman, and then woman over whoever the man gives her permission to be over. That's fucked up. That's not a good system, especially in 2026. Like, we're not doing that anymore.
No, we're not. We're taking our power back.
Yes.
Okay? We work together with the man as a partner, equal partner. Okay,
Yep.
which we are.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And then teaching our sons respect, teaching them courtesy, teaching our daughters what unsafe men look like. I can't even tell you how happy I am. My stepdaughters right now are in high school. And my stepdaughter came home from school the other day and she said, oh my God, there's a guy. He's a senior and he's dating a freshman. That is so disgusting. That was so normal when I was a kid. That was so normal. And now to kids these days, it is absolutely disgusting. They're calling him child predator and everything. They hate it. There's too much of an age gap. And I love it. And I'm just like, y'all keep thinking that. I like that. That's the right way to think.
We have to learn to love and respect ourselves before anybody else will. Mm-hmm. Period.
Yep.
Okay. Then we won't accept as anything. Okay. We'll accept what we deserve.
Exactly. We do. We absolutely accept what we can deserve. And just like when you're on an airplane, they always tell you to put the mask on yourself first. So women, we have given our mask to everybody else but ourselves for too long, and we're dying and we're sick and we're having heart attacks and we're committing suicide and our mental health is down the tubes. And it's like, when are we going to finally just say, I'm done doing this. I can't do this anymore.
And you know what? The thing about us doing all that, nobody gives a damn.
Nobody gives a damn. Yeah. No, you are absolutely right. They don't, because everybody just is trying to kind of take care of their own. And then, you know, we hear stories of, you know, like, well, for instance, that former congressman shot his wife and then killed himself. And people are like,
the Democrat.
And they're like, well, he had mental health issues. And no, he stole those children's mother from him because he's violent and he's dangerous. And she either was so stuck in the system that she didn't see the warning signs, which is very possible, because
there were warning signs. Normally there are.
right. And like I said, there was warning signs when I was married to my ex-husband too. And my friends tried to tell me about them. They tried to point them out to me. And I was just like, no, he wouldn't do that. No, he wouldn't go that far. I used to say that shit all the time.
Most of the time they isolate you from your friends and tell you they're no good. Just stay away from them.
Oh yeah. Towards the end of our marriage, I didn't have any friends anymore. My friends were gone. I mean, and not because we had like these fights or anything. It's because every single time I went out with my friends, it was a fight at home. And I just got so worn down and so tired of fighting that I was like, no, I can't go out. No, I'm sorry. I can't do it. And then the next thing you know, I'm like, wow, I haven't gone out with my friends in a year. So it's just, those are the warning signs and the red flags that you just can't ignore. You just can't.
Not at all. Sacrifice yourself to an early grave is what you're doing.
Yep. 100%. 100%. So I don't know.
Well,
I mean, if women ever reach out to me and they say, this is happening, I will always try to give, I'm always going to be the person that's going to try to give them the best advice possible through truth, through experience. I'm never just going to tell them what they want to hear, which I think that's where the problem lies, because especially with, when I talk about the white woman's role and patriarchy and things like that, I get a lot of hate. I get a lot of women that come at me and they just say, you don't know what you're talking about. But I do. And it's just, they just aren't ready to see the truth of the role that they play. And, it's not about blaming ever. It's not about blaming ever. It's about naming the truth that's in front of us and accepting and acknowledging that is the tension point that we have to stop doing, and there's so many different ways that we uphold patriarchy and we don't even realize we're doing it.
You're right, because I look back in those days when they had the cotton fields and everything, and all the slave owners, their wives knew that that their husbands was having sex with slaves, but they turned their head the other way. Okay, and they know that their husband was having these interracial kids as well. Okay, but they turned their head the other way because they didn't have any other recourse.
Yeah. And
okay?
that was a lot. I mean, it was almost every single slave owner's wife, like they were constantly raping their slaves. It was horrific. And white women it didn't happen, but it did. And once you start realizing, once you start acknowledging it and saying it out loud and stop giving excuses to these horrible men and their behaviors and their horrible behaviors, and we start calling it out, that's the only way we're going to get away from and break this whole patriarchal system. And when I say break it, I mean, we need to break it. The patriarchy is a system of abuse. We need to completely dismantle it.
Well, it's another topic to talk about how we can actually do that. But I think continuing to have these conversations, that's how we start to break these chains that bind us. Okay.
Information is power. I always say, like the more you know, it just helps you move in this world better. You don't get caught. I guess, what am I trying to say? You don't get blindsided by how did I get here? Because I've said it. I said it in 2 different marriages. I said it all the time. How the hell did I get here? How the hell did I get here? And it's because I just didn't have the information, or I wasn't willing to acknowledge the reality of what was happening around me.
It was probably a combination.
Yeah.
Okay. But you can't beat yourself up about it. Okay. Give
But
yourself
that's
some grace and
discernment.
say,
Yeah, that's discernment. That's how you sharpen your discernment, is you start to admit these things and you stop turning blind eyes to them.
and that's how we heal, is by
Mm-hmm.
admitting that these things happen to us.
Yep. Yep. And also that we participated in systems with a different understanding. One thing that I think is important for women to understand is that, and I still to this day, I have to keep reminding myself that you cannot look at your past with today's clarity, because that will eat you alive. You know, I still get teary-eyed when I talk about the things that happened with my children, and the things that, you know, how everything, how I learned about everything, and how it still pains me, because those are my kids. And nobody ever wants their kids to, you know, you never want to hear that your kids have been hurt, you know. But I always have to remind myself that back then I had a whole different lens. I still had layers in front of me. And now those layers have been taken away, and I'm looking back and I'm going, holy shit. And that's why they always say hindsight's always 20/20. But beating myself up over it, I don't know if it's so much of me beating myself up as me acknowledging. I'm just acknowledging. And I'm saying, this did happen, and I participated in this. I didn't stop it. And that's one thing that, you know, my sons, they don't care. They just know that in their experience, they watched their mother not do a damn thing about the abuse that was happening behind closed doors. That's their lens. And I have to acknowledge that. And I can't make excuses for it, because that was their experience. Just like with my parents, you know, I struggle having them in my life because they refuse to acknowledge what happened. They have refused to acknowledge that they weren't there for me the way that I needed them to be. And one thing that I do with my kids is I don't want to make excuses. They were right. I wasn't there for them. And now, you know, now I want to be, you know, and I am for one of my sons, you know, and if my other two sons ever come to me and want to figure things out and heal and all that stuff, I want to be there for them.
That is so courageous. And I wanted to thank you for coming on and telling your amazing story. That's why these conversations are so important.
Yeah, they are. They're really important. And I appreciate everything that you're doing, Margaret. You know, I come in every once in a while, and there's so many lives on this platform. It's like my ADD just goes nuts. I'm like, I'm going to go to this one, then I'm going to go to that one, then I'm going to go to this one, then I'll go back up to this one. So I come in and out of your lives, but there's a lot of times where I just stop and I'm just listening, and I'm like, this is so important. I'm so glad that she brought that up. I'm so glad that they're talking about this. Yeah.
Yes, yes, because at any one given time, there could be 8 to 10 lives going on at the same time. I have my
Mm-hmm.
desktop. I got two screens here. I'll have a live on one screen, one on the other. I'll have one on my
Yeah.
iPad and one on my phone. So I can show
Mm-hmm.
that I was participating in everybody's stuff. But okay, it
Yeah.
is what it is. And
Yeah.
that's why these conversations are so important. So anybody else have any important conversations that we need to have, please contact me so we can do that. Okay, this is all about raising consciousness for all of us, so we can continue to learn and grow together. Okay, thank you so much, Evie. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank
I
you for inviting me. You know, and these like I said, these conversations too, the more we talk about them, the easier they become. And, 6, 7, 8 years ago, I would not have been able to have this conversation without completely losing myself. So every single time I have these conversations, it's just a little bit more empowering and a little bit better and a little bit more clarity, where I really do find more understanding, just talking about it, and just like, oh yeah, that's that. I did that. That's why he's pissed. Yep. I think we need to have a talk about that. Yep.
I want to thank you all, each and every one of you, for joining as well. I know you had comments. I didn't read all the comments, but thank you all. Anyways, you can always get in contact with Evie and myself, and let's continue to support each other in this community. Okay.
Yay.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.